Andrew, have we just seen the future Prime Minister talking?
Well, I did once, some years ago now. In fact, I think I was the first person to tip him as a potential future Labour leader and Prime Minister. And I remember the next time I saw him, he hit me in the solar plexus and just said, "You've absolutely cursed me, Andrew." And it often is a curse to be tipped like that. I think it was sort of 4 years or so ago. I'm vaguely remember. I could go back and check, absolutely. But it was quite some time ago. I probably tipped him as the next but one Labour leader, and I was right about that, because Tony Blair was leader at that point.
His intellect or his ideas?
It's a combination of him being quite an attractive personality, not having many enemies, unusual politician of any party now. I mean, David Miliband makes quite intellectual speeches, and he still thinks speeches matter. He likes to do a speech and lay out a big idea. I'm not saying you would necessarily want to agree with the idea, but he's quite unusual for a politician that does care about speeches, and the speeches should have an argument, carry an argument, and present big ideas. But, you know, politics is a very uncertain old game, which is why these predictions of future prime ministers are a mug's thing to do, really. But we can't resist the temptation to do them. Yeah.
Do you think that he comes across as every man? Does the sound?
No, he doesn't come across as every man. I don't think even his best friends can pretend he does. But I think it probably has helped him and changed him a bit. He's probably had to develop bits of the political skill set that you don't need as a head of policy in Number 10. Somebody spent all their time policy wonking, doing the pointy-headed stuff. And that's the sort of the meeting and the greeting, the retail side of politics, selling your personality and your policies to voters. And I think that has changed him, and from his own point of view, better, because it would have made him a more rounded and accomplished politician.
One thing that fascinates me about Miliband and Mandelson and Campbell and Alan Milburn, all the students of, or the contemporaries of Tony Blair. Blair was an excellent communicator. And sometimes I think that the Mandelsons and Milibands start to talk like Blair, same mannerisms, the same kind of, well, you know, sort of.
Look, I think you have a point. No, I think you do. I mean, maybe it's odd, isn't it? It's like people are supposed to grow to look more like their pets, or do their pets grow to look more like them? I wonder if that's always true. If you're in close proximity with each other, and of course he was the dominant politician of his era. Yeah, I wonder if you do, even if it's not conscious. I don't think Alan Milburn or David Miliband or any of them sort of stood in front of their bathroom mirror practicing Tony gestures, but maybe they just subliminally absorb. Yeah, they absorb it. I think you may be on something. Yeah.
When you started the interview, you were talking about the presentation over policy in the early years of government.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. People I spoke to who were there at the time, all of the books that I've read, people who were there at the time say they were so surprised by the majority. They'd spent the previous 3 years just planning the election strategy and not enough thinking on what they'd actually do when they were elected.
Yeah.
Apart from Gordon Brown, who planned Bank of England independence.
Yeah.
Were you convinced by how he dealt with that one?
Well, that was his view. I mean, I'm more of the view, which is now shared by everybody from Jeff Mulgan on the policy side to Peter Mandelson, and even Alistair Campbell would probably accept some of this analysis. I mean, where they had actually planned things like the Bank of England independence, or some things they did in education and other areas, they went quite well. But they did go into government a lot of areas where they hadn't really got any detailed policy at all. Blair had some instincts and some blue sky ideas, but he hadn't really decide exactly what he wanted to do. And it's quite hard if you're David Miliband to form policy when the Prime Minister actually hasn't quite worked out what he wants to do in a lot of areas. I think Tony Blair didn't really come to a conclusion about what he wanted to do in health and education until towards the end of his first term. So he sort of lost 4 years on that. And I think the more honest of them will now concede that. And so there was a tendency, particularly because the big majority had aroused such massive expectations, and try and fill the gap with spin. And I think there was a problem, though, to confuse "we've won the media battle, we've got a really good headline in tomorrow morning's newspapers," with actually making something different on the ground. And I don't think they took a while to realise that and to start changing it. I suppose partly they were slightly victims of their own success in opposition. I mean, the techniques they New Labour pioneered, which come under this shorthand of spin, been so brilliantly successful at destroying the Conservatives, you can see why they clung on to them for far too long once they got into government, which is a very different sort of business.
Now, when you ask him about the leadership, obviously he's going to say Gordon Brown's a fantastic leader and he's got a very, very important job to do himself as Foreign Secretary. But there's always a sense that sometimes people can miss the boat, that their time passes and somebody else comes along. If you're in David Miliband's shoes, do you have to also keep one eye on the next job and building a constituency in the Labour Party to challenge in some future point?
Not at the moment, I don't think, and it's very hard when you're Foreign Secretary because you're not really around very much. And from his point of view, it would just be stupid to think about it at the moment. So he's probably doing the best thing he can do, which is try and master being Foreign Secretary and make a success of that.